Chapter 3665. Long Yanwei was naturally worried that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others would cause trouble again after being surrounded by the crowd. He was very clear about the significance of this healing medicine to the inner palace cultivators. If they were to fight over it, Bailey Hongzhuang would suffer for no reason. When Long Yanwei and Yi Zihua arrived, they saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and Yi Zihua were surrounded by a sea of people. Yi Zihua could not help but sigh. Yanwei, it's rare to see such a lively scene in Penglai Palace. However, ever since you recruited Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, this situation has often happened. Yi Zihua was not lying about this. In Penglai Palace, other than the appearance of the palace master, it would attract a crowd of disciples to surround him. Such a situation rarely happened on normal days. The most important thing was that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three had only been in the Penglai Palace for a short period of time. Apart from the time they went out to gain experience, it seemed that every time they appeared in this outer hall, they would cause such a scene. Come to think of it, this was also an amazing ability. Long Yanwei frowned slightly. Just as he was about to refute, he realized that what Yi Zihua said seemed to be true. Lord Long is here. Lord Long and Instructor Yi are here. Soon the crowd noticed the appearance of Long Yanwei and Yi Zihua. Immediately the crowd restrained themselves. Greetings, Lord Long and Instructor Yi. Long Yanwei nodded slightly and then slowly walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. Today the outer hall is really lively. Hearing Long Yanwei's emotionless words, the cultivators present could not help but lower their heads. They secretly cursed the reason for Long Yanwei's appearance here. I told you Lord Long is protecting Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang has come out of seclusion, Lord Long will definitely come. I wasn't willing to believe it before, but now I have no choice but to believe it. However, everyone is just asking for medicine and did not do anything excessive. It shouldn't be a big deal, right? I'm not sure. Let's see what Lord Long has to say. Everyone looked at each other, and they were unable to figure out exactly what Long Yanwei intended to do. Seeing the appearance of Long Yanwei, the faces of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen both showed a smile and saluted. Long Darren Mentor Yi. He's out of seclusion? Long Yanwei's face rippled with a cordial smile. He carefully sized up Di Beichen and said, You've broken through? Di Beichen cupped his hands and nodded. I broke through not long ago. Not bad. Long Yanwei's eyes flashed with a hint of satisfaction. With Di Beichen's age he was able to break through to the 6th level of the Purple Realm. This speed could be said to be fast enough. As soon as I came back, I heard that you've developed a new type of healing medicine that's extremely effective. That's why I came over with Instructor Yi to take a look. Long Yanwei retracted his gaze and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang again. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up slightly. She said, Lord Long, I was just about to hand this matter over to you. What do you mean? Long Yanwei was slightly stunned, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. Since I was recruited by Lord Long, I've always thought of Lord Long as my instructor. Chapter 3666. Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes quietly reflected a touch of slyness. Her red lips parted slightly as she quietly exchanged glances with Di Beichen. Both of them understood each other tacitly. They had already thought about this beforehand. Firstly, although Bailey Hongzhuang could concoct the healing medicine, it was impossible for her to spend all her time concocting the healing medicine. As a result, there would definitely be people who had it and people who didn't. She didn't have much interaction with the majority of the disciples in the inner palace. There was no need for her to offend some of the disciples because of this. If Master Long were to step in, then the situation would be much simpler. After all, Master Long's prestige was there. As long as Master Long spoke, no one would have any objections. Secondly, if Bailey Hongzhuang gave the right to distribute the healing medicine to Long Yanwei, it would undoubtedly help to raise Long Yanwei's status. This was because the healing medicine was too useful to the disciples of the inner palace. Not only that, the secret of the healing medicine couldn't be concealed. It wouldn't take long for other forces to find out. When everyone knew that the healing medicine was controlled by Long Yanwei, there was no need to talk about Long Yanwei's influence. This could be deduced from the fact that Bailey Hongzhuang sold a prescription to the Magic Training Tower that made the Magic Training Tower famous. Ever since they came to the Penglai Palace, Long Yanwei had been helping them. In comparison, other than causing some trouble, they really couldn't repay Long Yanwei with anything. Now they could take advantage of this opportunity to return the favor. At least they could express some of their feelings. When everyone heard Bailey Hongzhuang's decision, they couldn't help but be stunned. If they were to obtain the healing medicine from Bailey Hongzhuang, they still had many ways. However, if they were to obtain the healing medicine from Master Long, they had to follow the rules set by Master Long. Long Yanwei never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would make such a decision. A trace of astonishment immediately surfaced in his calm eyes. Bailey Hongzhuang did not give Long Yanwei too much time to think. She immediately handed a Qingkuan pouch to Long Yanwei and said, "Master Long, all the medicine I've made during this period of time is here. I'll leave it to you to decide how to distribute it." After receiving the healing medicine from Bailey Hongzhuang, Long Yanwei finally reacted. He looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen with a complicated expression. However, he only saw the sincere smiles on their faces. Long Yanwei was not a stupid person. After thinking about it for a moment, he already understood the reason why they did this. He could not help but sigh in his heart. However, in the current situation, it was clearly not suitable for him to say anything more to Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. Instead, he looked at the other disciples of the inner hall who were waiting. "Since Bailey Hongzhuang has given the right to distribute the medicine to me, in my opinion, the first batch of healing medicine should be auctioned off for the time being. As for how this problem should be handled in the future, the hall master and I will make a decision after discussing it carefully." Bailey Hongzhuang's decision caught Long Yanwei off guard. For the time being, auctioning was the most suitable method. As for how the medicine would be distributed in the future, it was clearly impossible to always rely on auctioning. They had to think of the most suitable method. Chapter 3667. Bailey Hongzhuang, what do you think of my decision? Long Yanwei asked aloud. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips bloomed into a bright smile. "Master Long, I naturally have no objections to your decision." Di Beichen also nodded. Long Yanwei's decision was not beyond their expectations. In fact, when they were first thinking about how to distribute the healing medicine, they also thought of the auction method. After all, this method was the fairest. No matter what the final result was, no one could find any fault with it. "That's good." The smile on Long Yanwei's face widened a little, and his voice became a lot lighter. After Long Yanwei made the final decision, everyone immediately stopped pestering Bailey Hongzhuang. Now that Long Yanwei had made his move, it was meaningless for them to continue pestering him. It was better to go back and think about how to buy the healing medicine through the auction. However, just as everyone was about to leave, Long Yanwei reminded everyone that the auction was not using spirit stones, but Penglai Palace's points. This was also the consideration of Long Yanwei, Bailey Hongzhuang, and the other three. In the outside world, the role of spirit stones was naturally huge, but after coming to Penglai Palace, it was obvious that the role of points was greater than spirit stones. Here, points could be exchanged for spirit stones, but spirit stones could not be exchanged for points. With points, they could go to the resource room to exchange for the cultivation resources they needed, which was far more convenient than points. Not only that, using points to bid was also fairer for the disciples of the inner palace. After all, points were obtained by hunting skeletons. After everyone dispersed, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen followed Long Yanwei to his bedroom. "I haven't seen you for a while. I didn't expect you to give me such a huge surprise." Long Yanwei smiled as he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen in front of him. "I didn't know that your medical skills were so outstanding. When I found out about it, I just thought that someone had spread it wrongly." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. "Previously, I saw the power of darkness for the first time in the training ground. After that, I studied it carefully and concocted this healing medicine. Originally, I didn't intend to make it public and just gave it to senior brother Ren and the others. However, I didn't expect this matter to spread so widely that it finally evolved into what it is today." Bailey Hongzhuang spoke casually, but Long Yanwei and Yi Zihua were stunned after hearing this. It had only been 1 or 2 months since Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three mistakenly entered the training ground of the inner palace. Even if Bailey Hongzhuang said that she studied it, how could she have studied it in such a short period of time? If the 100 Flowers Gates people heard Bailey Hongzhuang's words, wouldn't they spit out a mouthful of blood? But Bailey Hongzhuang said it as if it was a matter of course, without the slightest bit of falsehood, which made the contrast even bigger. "I see." The corner of Long Yanwei's lips twitched. After this incident, he suddenly realized that he didn't have a good enough understanding of the disciples he had recruited. It was obvious that Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills were not ordinary. "Since you've handed this matter to me, I will handle it properly and obtain the greatest benefits for you." Long Yanwei's eyes were filled with a serious light. However, this kind of news will definitely not be able to be hidden from the palace master. It's good for you to hand over the authority to handle this matter to me. It will be better for you if I negotiate with the palace master. Chapter 3668. Since they were now disciples of Penglai Palace, their actions naturally had an inseparable relationship with Penglai Palace. Penglai Palace was different from the Magic Tower. The cultivators of the Magic Tower could leave at any time and anywhere. They were only staying there temporarily. The Magic Tower did not have the right to ask them to do anything. Entering Penglai Palace was like joining a system. They could obtain cultivation resources from here. At the same time, they also needed to fulfill certain obligations. From the moment Bailey Hongzhuang decided to spread the news, they had already expected that this matter would definitely reach the ears of the palace master. However, after the previous incident, they also had a certain favorable impression of the palace master. Therefore, they did not feel that there was anything wrong with it. At present, I still don't know how effective this healing medicine is in restraining the power of darkness. After we figure it out, we will be able to give you an accurate answer. If the effect is really excellent, then it is an extremely precious resource for the entire Penglai Inner Palace. Naturally, your contributions cannot go unnoticed. Long Yanwei's eyes were filled with a faint luster of appreciation. Although he had not yet understood the true effect of the healing medicine, he had already determined in his heart that the effect would definitely not be bad. Therefore, Bailey Hongzhuang had really made a great contribution this time. Originally, the palace master found it difficult to understand his generous decision this time. However, he believed that after the palace master knew about this matter, his thoughts would completely change. Bailey Hongzhuang cupped her hands. Thank you, Master Long. She originally made this healing medicine because they would go to the inner palace to train in the future. The earlier they developed the healing medicine, the better it would be for them in the future. On the other hand, she hoped that Ren Ziheng and the others would be safe. Speaking of which, the disciples of the inner palace dealt with the skeleton army to protect the entire Xingxian continent. If she could do something for them, it would be reasonable. Now that you have left this matter to me to handle, presumably the other disciples will not disturb you due to my identity. You can cultivate in peace. If there is any problem, if someone disturbs you or wants to use other means to seize the healing medicine, you can tell me. Long Yanwei narrowed his eyes. As he spoke, a hint of coldness appeared between his brows. In this Penglai Palace, there was no lack of daring people. Maybe someone would want to use some tough means to take the prescription from Bailey Hongzhuang. Although he could deter most of the practitioners, he could not guarantee that all the practitioners would not have such thoughts. After all, the medicinal formula of this kind of healing medicine was a shocking profit. As long as he mastered this recipe, he could rely on it to live a carefree life in the future. Thank you for your concern, Master Long. We will be more careful, Di Beichen replied. He had also thought of this, but they were still confident that they could deal with other cultivators. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen left, Yi Zihua looked at Long Yanwei with a faint smile on his handsome face. Yanwei, you really did not recruit the wrong two disciples. Previously, I only thought that they would often cause trouble for you. However, from their actions today, it seems that they still value you very much. Yi Zihua was also a smart person. Naturally, he could see the purpose of Bailey Hongzhuang's actions. This was to increase Long Yanwei's status and influence. Chapter 3669. Hearing Yi Zihua's words, the smile in Long Yanwei's eyes couldn't help but soften a little. I also didn't expect that they would give me such a big surprise. It's really unexpected, but just as you said, I also feel that my eyesight is not bad. Seeing that Long Yanwei was so happy from the bottom of his heart, Yi Zihua was also a little surprised. Bailey Hongzhuang gave you the right to distribute this healing medicine. It is indeed quite beneficial for you, but it's not like you haven't had such an opportunity before, and I've never seen you so happy. You don't understand. Long Yanwei waved his hand. What I value the most is not this benefit, but this intention. Yi Zihua raised his eyebrows. Intention? Thinking back to when I recruited them back then, I was cheated of 3 demon pet eggs. This kind of sacrifice is already not small. Sometimes even I don't understand why I would do this. However, just now I thought it through. Perhaps it was because I took a fancy to their grateful nature that I was willing to do this. Long Yanwei's face lit up with joy. He had never thought of obtaining any repayment from Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3. However, the actions of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had given him a warm feeling. He had stayed on Penglai Island for so many years, and had long seen through the fickleness of human nature. Almost everyone only valued their own interests, and it was precisely because of this that he usually stayed in his own palace and was unwilling to communicate with others. When he first met Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3, on one hand he admired the strength of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3, and on the other hand he also admired the sincere feelings that the 4 of them revealed. And now, when Di Baichen and the others also used this kind of feelings to treat him, only then did he understand the reason why he took such care of them before. Yizihua originally did not understand. With Long Yanwei's status on Penglai Island, he could get whatever he wanted. However, it had been a long time since he saw Long Yanwei's happy expression from the bottom of his heart. It was only after hearing Long Yanwei's words that he finally understood. Thinking about it carefully, everything was as Long Yanwei had said. Affection was the most precious thing. Looks like you've recruited 4 good disciples. Yizihua smiled faintly. Then I have to congratulate you. Long Yanwei smiled. Your disciple is also not bad. As the news of the upcoming auction for the healing medicine spread out, all the cultivators in the inner palace began to actively prepare for it. Even if they lost these points, they could still earn them back in the future. After obtaining the healing medicine, they would have more assurance when they went to the training grounds. For a time, many cultivators tried to use spirit stones or other things to exchange for points. However, most of the other cultivators had the same idea, so it was not very useful. Some of the cultivators who had just used their points to exchange for cultivation resources could be said to be extremely depressed. One by one they beat their chests and stamped their feet in regret. If they had known this would happen, they would not have exchanged for cultivation resources in the first place. Now they could only watch helplessly as everyone bid. Penglai Palace's palace master gradually got wind of this news and immediately rushed to Long Yanwei's palace. Yanwei. Palace Master Bai Tsangmin smiled brightly as he walked towards Long Yanwei. Greetings, Hall Master. Long Yanwei cupped his hands, but his attitude was somewhat cold. Chapter 3670. Bai Tsangmin originally planned to not appear in front of Long Yanwei for a period of time and wait for Long Yanwei's anger to subside. Now that he knew that Bailey Hongzhuang actually made a healing medicine that could effectively restrain the power of darkness, the latter just had to give the right to dispose of the medicine to Long Yanwei. As a result, it was impossible for him to hide for a while. At this moment he could only brace himself and look for Long Yanwei. Although he was the palace master of Penglai Palace, Long Yanwei, as the highest-ranked contract master in the entire Penglai Island, had always been a popular figure. If Long Yanwei wanted to leave Penglai Palace, he could choose any other forces. Fortunately, the two of them were extremely good friends in private. Long Yanwei was already used to being robbed by him over the years. However, he was a little too ruthless this time, so Long Yanwei was a little unhappy. Bai Tsangmin gave Yizihua, who was beside Long Yanwei, a look. Yizihua helplessly spread out his hands. Even he felt that Bai Tsangmin was a little too ruthless previously. Now there was nothing he could do. Seeing Yizihua's neutral appearance, Bai Tsangmin felt even more helpless in his heart. The smile on his face also revealed a hint of flattery. Yanwei, no matter what, we've been friends for so many years. Don't be angry about what happened last time. Long Yanwei's expression was indifferent. How would I dare to be angry at the palace master? Look, you're obviously angry. Bai Tsangmin sat down opposite Long Yanwei. Didn't I do that last time because you gave the 4 rookies such good treatment for the first time? I took the opportunity to take advantage of you. If you're unhappy, you'll return the demon pet egg to me? Long Yanwei asked. Bai Tsangmin smiled brilliantly. That's impossible. If that's the case, then what's the point of talking about it? That's not how it is. Bai Tsangmin waved his hand. I won't return this demon pet egg to you. However, if you want anything else, as long as it's possible, I'll agree to it. Hearing that, Long Yanwei rolled his eyes. I'm not interested in those things of yours. Bai Tsangmin's face froze. Yanwei, aren't you really not giving me any face? Could it be that there isn't anything that you're interested in from a hall master like me? Long Yanwei glanced at Bai Tsangmin and did not say anything. Bai Tsangmin, on the other hand, gradually felt guilty. Speaking of which, with Long Yanwei's ability, it seemed that there really wasn't anything that he couldn't get. On the contrary, he really needed the demon pet egg for the Penglai Palace's disciples. Alright, you win. Bai Tsangmin shrugged. A wisp of a smile gradually appeared in the depths of Long Yanwei's eyes when he saw Bai Tsangmin's appearance. He and Bai Tsangmin had known each other for many years, and their friendship was extremely deep. It was precisely because of this that Bai Tsangmin could rob him without any scruples. Speaking of which, he didn't take this anger to heart. It was just that he was used to being stingy on demon pet eggs, and it was just for fun. Now that he looked at Bai Tsangmin's helpless appearance, he felt that it was very interesting. There was probably no one else other than Bai Tsangmin who could do this for a hall master. Yizihua could not help but chuckle. Bai Tsangmin only acted like this in front of his friends of many years. If anyone else saw the dignified Penglai Palace master acting like this, they would definitely be dumbfounded. Chapter 3671. Bai Cangming's eyes lit up when he heard Long Yanwei's words. What do you need? Originally, Bai Cangming was worried that Long Yanwei would take advantage of this opportunity to rob him. However, after experiencing the earlier scene, he was looking forward to having something that Long Yanwei needed. Don't you have a few fiery fruits? Give them to me. Fiery fruits? Bai Cangming raised his eyebrows. This fiery fruit has the effect of purifying a cultivator's yuan power. However, with your current cultivation, this fiery fruit is of no use to you. What do you need it for? The flaming fruit was a great treasure for cultivators who were at a lower realm. Not only could it purify the origin energy, but it could also allow the cultivator to break through. Normally, the disciples would fight to obtain the flaming fruit. However, this fiery fruit was extremely rare. Even if it appeared in an auction, it would be snatched away in an instant. It was extremely difficult for an ordinary cultivator to obtain it. Yizihua quickly understood. Yanwei, you intend to give this fiery fruit to those 4 little fellows? Long Yanwei smiled faintly and nodded his head. With their current cultivation, consuming this fire fruit is the most appropriate choice. Since they have given me such a great gift this time, I naturally cannot treat them unfairly. Looking at Long Yanwei's protective appearance, the surprise in Yizihua's eyes was even stronger. It seemed that after the actions of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, Long Yanwei had completely regarded them as his own people. Although Long Yanwei had protected them previously, it was not to such an extent. However, Long Yanwei was now thinking for them from the bottom of his heart. Bai Cangming also understood at this moment. So it's those 4 little fellows. Bailey Hongzhuang has done such a great service this time. It's only right to give them some rewards. You're wrong. Long Yanwei waved his hand. This fiery fruit is my reward for them. Palace Master, you have to think about what rewards you should give them. Don't mix it up with my things. Bai Cangming was stunned. He stared at Long Yanwei in shock. You're becoming more and more shrewd. I can't help it. Those who are close to ink will be affected. Long Yanwei looked at Bai Cangming calmly. Obviously the ink he was referring to was Bai Cangming. Cough cough. Bai Cangming coughed dryly. Forget it. Since you've put it this way, I'll seem petty if I don't take out something of value. After so many years, you've only taken a fancy to these 4 disciples. It's only right that you treat them well. Then it's settled. The smile on Long Yanwei's lips widened. Hall Master, you can now tell me the reason why you're here. Bai Cangming finally reacted when he heard Long Yanwei's words. I was so focused on telling you about the previous matter that I almost forgot about this important matter. I heard that Bailey Hongzhuang gave you all the medicine she made. That's right. They're all with me. Then have you studied the effects of this healing medicine on dark energy? Bai Cangming's joking expression was replaced by a serious one. This was a huge matter for the Penglai Palace. If the effect was excellent, the death rate of the inner palace disciples would be greatly reduced. Chapter 3672. How's the effect? Bai Cangming couldn't help but ask. It's just as everyone has heard. The effect is extremely good, Long Yanwei replied. He and Yizihua couldn't help but be shocked when they saw the outstanding effect. They had already heard that the effect was extremely good, but they still couldn't help but be astonished when they saw it with their own eyes. Because the effect was even better than they had imagined. Bai Cangming's eyes lit up and he continued to ask, it's even better than the healing medicine from the demonic training tower? That's right, the effect is even better. Yizihua came over as well. The effect is more than twice as good as the healing medicine from the demonic training tower. The dark energy has already been weakened by more than half. Although there are still some slight effects, they aren't too big. That's great. Bai Cangming was overjoyed. He clapped his hands as a joyful smile covered his face. I never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would actually be able to concoct such a healing medicine. She's truly amazing. Yanwei, it seems that I was wrong to have doubted your foresight. Now it seems that your foresight is truly extraordinary. Because he was too happy, Bai Cangming didn't mind belittling himself. Compared to a little face, he valued the inner palace disciples more. Over the years, the casualty rate of the inner palace disciples had always been their greatest worry. They couldn't bear to see their disciples lose their lives after achieving so much with great difficulty. Unfortunately, they hadn't been able to find an effective healing medicine to deal with the dark energy after such a long time. They never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would actually be able to accomplish this. It was truly a pleasant surprise. Of course. Long Yanwei was slightly pleased. During this period of time, everyone felt that his actions were too abnormal, and he was slightly unhappy. Now that he could finally hold his head high, he was in a good mood. Hall Master, since you're here, I'm sure you've already heard that I'm going to auction this healing medicine, right? Long Yanwei asked. Bai Cangming nodded. I've heard. You've made the right decision, but I feel that we should change the method in the future. I had the same plan, but Bailey Hongzhuang spoke of this matter so suddenly that I could only think of this method in a short period of time. I understand. Bai Cangming's eyes were filled with understanding. Under the circumstances from before, Long Yanwei's idea of holding an auction was undoubtedly the best method. Hall Master, have you thought of a way to deal with it? Yizihua couldn't help but ask. Bai Cangming nodded, and the smile on the corners of his mouth widened. That's right. I've decided to exchange this healing medicine for points in the future. This way it'll be very fair, and it'll also be able to promote everyone's training. Hearing this, Long Yanwei and Yizihua looked at each other. This was indeed an excellent idea. Most importantly, in this way, Bailey Hongzhuang would undoubtedly have the palace master as her backer. If Long Yanwei's reputation was not great enough, then with the palace master's backing, most people would not dare to plot against her. Although I have made such a decision, it still depends on whether Bailey Hongzhuang is willing or not. Bai Cangming spoke slowly. Yanwei, do you think the possibility of making Bailey Hongzhuang hand over the prescription is high? Chapter 3673. Under such circumstances, it would be best for the entire Penglai Palace if Bailey Hongzhuang was willing to hand over the prescription. Similarly, once Bailey Hongzhuang agreed, Bailey Hongzhuang's contribution to the Penglai Palace would be extraordinarily great. This was because not only would it reduce the casualty rate of inner palace disciples, it would also increase the Penglai Palace's influence. Although the Penglai Palace was already one of the three great forces, everyone knew that the Penglai Palace was definitely the top existence. Once the Penglai Palace released this healing medicine, the Penglai Palace's status would definitely rise again. Both the 100 Flower sect and the Crimson Moon sect would definitely be amazed. Long Yanwei could not help but ponder when he heard Bai Cangming's words. His tone was somewhat uncertain. I can't make a judgment on this matter. I can only know after asking Bailey Hongzhuang's opinion. This kind of prescription was an extremely precious treasure to the cultivators of the Penglai Palace who came into contact with the power of darkness. Most cultivators would probably not be willing to take it out. After all, as long as this resource was in their hands, they could exchange it for many precious treasures. Yizihua also spread his hands. Actually, I don't think that most people would agree. Bai Cangming's expression became somewhat complicated when he heard that. He also understood that this matter was related to personal interests. If Bailey Hongzhuang was willing, as long as there was something on the Penglai Island, she would be able to exchange it for the prescription no matter what it was. If he handed over the prescription at this moment, it would only be a short-term benefit. On the contrary, if he held the prescription in his hands, Bailey Hongzhuang would be able to obtain an endless supply of resources. Yanwei, see if you can help with this matter. This is too important to the development of the Penglai Palace and the entire Penglai Island. Bai Cangming looked at Long Yanwei. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang had this kind of prescription, she would definitely be a highly sought-after existence no matter which force she went to. Even if he used his identity as the palace master to pressure Bailey Hongzhuang, it would be meaningless. He still needed Bailey Hongzhuang to voluntarily hand over the prescription. After thinking about it, the only possibility was Long Yanwei. Hall Master, don't place high hopes on me. Long Yanwei hurriedly waved his hand with a helpless expression. Although I've recruited Bailey Hongzhuang, I don't have the qualifications to make her give up such a huge benefit. Bai Cangming nodded. I understand. I don't intend to force Bailey Hongzhuang to hand over the prescription. I just want you to help me ask around and try your best. Long Yanwei's eyes flickered with a complicated light. He originally thought that it was already very difficult for Bailey Hongzhuang to give him the method to process this healing medicine. He never thought that the palace master would actually want this pill formula. As a result, he was undoubtedly in an awkward position. Yanwei, every time we see an inner palace disciple die, both you and I feel terrible. Now that we finally have such an opportunity, we have to work hard. Bai Cangming sighed. He naturally understood that Long Yanwei's situation was a little awkward, but there was no other way. Chapter 3674. Long Yanwei furrowed his brows tightly. After his deep gaze swept across Yizihua and Bai Cangming, he finally sighed helplessly and said, "I will try my best." "Thank you, Yanwei." A trace of seriousness surfaced on Bai Zongming's face, and he was no longer joking. It was already very difficult for Long Yanwei to agree to help him ask about this matter. With Long Yanwei's usual temperament, he had never interfered with such matters. "I'm only going to ask. As for what decision Bailey Hongzhuang will make in the end, I have no control over it," said Long Yanwei. "I understand. If Bailey Hongzhuang is unwilling, I will not force her," replied Bai Zongming. If it were any other disciple of Penglai Palace, he might really use some coercive methods. After all, he was the palace master. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was recruited by Long Yanwei, so he could not do that. Hearing Bai Zongming's words, Long Yanwei's eyes were filled with smiles. After Bailey Hongzhuang returned to her residence, she discovered that although there were still many cultivators paying attention to them, no one dared to disturb them. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but chuckle. "Beichen, it seems that the idea we came up with is indeed very good. It saves us a lot of trouble." Beichen pulled Bailey Hongzhuang's soft and boneless hand over. Taking advantage of the situation, the latter sat on his lap and fell into his embrace. "Master Long has an extremely high position in Penglai Palace. With his appearance, ordinary cultivators will naturally not dare to disturb us." Beichen stared at Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful face while his right hand played with her little hand. "What we should think about now should be the palace master and Master Long's final decision on how to distribute this healing medicine in the future." Bailey Hongzhuang hooked her arm around Beichen's neck and her beautiful lips curled up slightly. "What do you think the hall master will decide?" Beichen thought for a moment and said, "If I were the palace master, I would want to make this healing medicine a resource that everyone in the Penglai Palace can exchange for. Therefore, using points to exchange for it is undoubtedly the most appropriate." "Exchange points?" Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly. Her amber eyes flashed with a thoughtful light, and then she understood. This is indeed an excellent method. As expected of the young sect master of Tiangang's sect. Every time he can think of the best way to deal with it from the perspective of the sect. "Wife, are you praising your husband?" Beichen gazed at Bailey Hongzhuang with his deep eyes. His voice was gentle and intoxicating. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. "Of course. Wife praises your husband so much. Your husband is overjoyed. I can only use one way to thank you for your praise." Beichen's lips suddenly curled up, but his eyes gradually deepened. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was a little surprised. "What way?" "Ah." In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang only felt that the world was spinning. In the blink of an eye, she was pressed under Beichen's body. A pair of dishonest hands had begun to grope her. "Beichen." Bailey Hongzhuang's pretty face blushed. "We haven't finished talking about the healing medicine. No hurry. But it won't be long before the hall master and the others should come to us. We have to think of a countermeasure." Beichen's fingertips gently pressed on Bailey Hongzhuang's red lips, blocking her words. "Wife, the most important thing now is to get down to business. Other things can be discussed later." Chapter 3675. Knock knock knock. Everything was just as Bailey Hongzhuang had expected. Someone knocked on the door outside the house. Bailey Hongzhuang was shocked and her face turned even redder. "Beichen outside." Beichen waved his hand and his elemental energy immediately surrounded the room, completely isolating the sound from the outside. "You." Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly stunned. Her hands were pressed against Beichen's warm chest, and her face was filled with helplessness. It could be Palace Master or Lord Long outside. "It's fine, they won't be so tactless." Beichen's lips curled, and his smile became even more devilish. "But, shoo." Beichen planted a deep kiss on Bailey Hongzhuang's lips. "Wife, focus." Long Yanwei and Yi Zihua knocked on the door for a while, but there was no response. The two of them looked at each other and couldn't help but frown. What was going on? Could it be that Bailey Hongzhuang and Yi Zihua had already predicted that they would come here, so they closed the door and refused to see them? Seeing this, Xiren couldn't help but walk over. "Greetings, Lord Long, Teacher Yi." "When Xiren, do you know why Bailey Hongzhuang and Yi Zihua didn't open the door?" Long Yanwei asked. "Didn't open the door?" Xiren frowned. It shouldn't be, he quickly reacted and swallowed the words in his mouth. Although his heart was still filled with doubts, he naturally made up a lie. "Hongzhuang previously told me that she felt that the seniors in the inner palace had a huge demand for this healing medicine, so she wanted to make more. In order to prevent others from disturbing them, They might have used their elemental energy to isolate the sound from the outside. After hearing Xiren's explanation, Long Yanwei and Yi Zihua finally understood, and they felt even more gratified in their hearts. They never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would actually think so much for her senior brothers and sisters in the inner palace. Master Long, why don't you go back first? When Hongzhuang and the others come out, I'll tell them to go to your palace. How about that? Long Yanwei nodded. All right, tell them that I have something to discuss with them. When Xiren heaved a sigh of relief after Long Yanwei and the other man had left, he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the other man's tightly shut door and felt extremely puzzled. What are Beichen and the others busy with right now? Logically speaking, he shouldn't have suddenly gone into seclusion. Shengguan Yingying heard the commotion outside and walked over. Maybe they're busy with something. Why don't we ask them when they come out? When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen opened the door, Long Yanwei and the others had already left. Bailey Hongzhuang glared angrily at Di Beichen, but when her expression fell into Di Beichen's eyes, it became extremely flirtatious. Wife, if you continue to look at your husband like that, your husband might not be able to control himself. Di Beichen smiled wickedly. Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly stunned, and guiltily withdrew her gaze. This guy had always been powerful, but he was also so powerful in this aspect. She had always been willing to admit defeat. When Xiren and Shengguan Yingying had been paying attention to Bailey Hongzhuang and the other man's movements. At this moment, when they heard the commotion, they immediately rushed over. Beichen, Master Long and Teacher Yi came looking for you just now, but what were you too busy with? Why didn't you open the door? Chapter 3676. Looking at Di Beichen's matter-of-fact and unguilty look, Bailey Hongzhuang felt a burst of admiration in her heart. If she didn't know what was going on, she would have believed Di Beichen's righteous look at this moment. Di Beichen glanced at Bailey Hongzhuang from the corner of his eyes as if to ask, "Am I not telling the truth?" Bailey Hongzhuang laughed in her heart. Back then, who knows how many people were deceived by Di Beichen's expression. This guy was actually a bad person. Master Long and the others must have come looking for you because of the healing medicine. I think you should hurry up and take a look. When Xiren said. Di Beichen nodded. Hongzhuang and I will go over now. Do you want to go together? We won't go. Xiren waved his hand. This healing medicine was made by Hongzhuang. It would be inconvenient for us to go together. In this matter, they had no intention of taking advantage of Bailey Hongzhuang. After all, it was not easy for Bailey Hongzhuang to develop this healing medicine. They had already benefited a lot from it. It would be inappropriate for them to go together now. Di Beichen also understood Xiren's thoughts and immediately said, "Then Hongzhuang and I will go and take a look first." Go quickly. Shengguan Yingying smiled. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen arrived at the bedroom, Long Yanwei and Yi Zihua were obviously waiting for them. Greetings, Master Long and Teacher Yi. The two bowed respectfully. Long Yanwei waved his hand. I called you here today to discuss something with you. Please speak, Master Long. The Palace Master already knows about this healing medicine. According to the Palace Master's idea, the best way to deal with this healing medicine in the future is to choose to exchange points. This is the fairest and most convenient way. Long Yanwei said slowly, looking at Bailey Hongzhuang and Yi Zihua, paying attention to the changes in their expressions. Hearing this answer, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen remained calm, but in their hearts, they already knew that the situation was exactly the same as Di Beichen thought. If this healing medicine is to be exchanged with points, then the quantity of this healing medicine must be increased. Bailey Hongzhuang alone may not be enough to make it. Therefore, the Palace Master hopes that you can hand over the prescription of this healing medicine. As a condition of exchange, you can ask for any heavenly treasure you want as long as the Penglai Palace has it. At the same time, if this healing medicine is sold in the future, 20% of the profit will be yours. Long Yanwei looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's expression and said the conditions they had agreed on. Master Long has tried his best to fight for the best conditions for you. Yi Zihua followed up and said, 20%, this profit is very considerable. Similarly, if you agree, then you can directly become an inner hall disciple because of your great contribution and enjoy the treatment of an inner hall disciple. If it was an ordinary disciple, it was absolutely impossible to have such treatment. It was only because of the relationship between Long Yanwei and Bailey Hongzhuang and others that the Palace Master offered such good conditions. Chapter 3677. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other. They had already guessed that the Penglai Palace wanted to obtain the prescription. In fact, when Bailey Hongzhuang had decided to announce this news, she had already expected this to happen. Therefore she did not find it strange at all. Long Yanwei saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen had fallen into silence and could not help but say, "If you're unwilling, there's no need to be conflicted. You can tell me directly. You were the ones who had researched this prescription. Naturally, you have the right to decide." Long Yanwei did not find this strange at all. In fact, if it had been anyone else, they would not have been willing to hand it over. Yizihua frowned. In fact, the palace master's offer was already very good. No matter how much healing medicine was sold in the future, 20% of it would belong to Bailey Hongzhuang. In this way, Bailey Hongzhuang would be able to get a lot of benefits without having to worry about anything. In comparison, this was undoubtedly much more convenient. Unfortunately, Bailey Hongzhuang was still unwilling. If the palace master were to find out about this result, he would definitely be very disappointed. However, at this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly said, "All right, I agree." Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Long Yanwei and Yizihua could not help but be stunned. They stared at Bailey Hongzhuang in astonishment and wondered if they had heard wrongly. "You said, you agree?" Long Yanwei asked with uncertainty. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded her delicate head gently. Her voice was serious and steady as she said, "That's right, I agree." Seeing this, Long Yanwei and Yizihua could not help but look at each other. In fact, when Bailey Hongzhuang had refused previously, they were not surprised. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang had suddenly agreed, they found it hard to believe. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen naturally noticed the astonishment on Long Yanwei's and Di Beichen's faces. They couldn't help but feel a little amused. It was rare to see such an expression on the other party's face. It seemed that their decision had greatly exceeded Long Yanwei's and Di Beichen's expectations. "Are you really willing?" Long Yanwei asked again. "Don't do something against your will because of the hall master's pressure or my existence. We all know how precious this prescription is." If he had been rejected, Long Yanwei would not have felt anything. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang had agreed, he felt a burst of pressure. If Bailey Hongzhuang had made such a decision because of him, then he would have let Bailey Hongzhuang down. Seeing the worry in Long Yanwei's eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang naturally understood the former's thoughts. She was faintly touched in her heart. She never thought that Long Yanwei would actually be so considerate of them. Although they had never been well liked in Penglai Palace, it was already a great blessing to be able to receive Long Yanwei's sincere treatment. "Master Long, you don't have to worry about us. We are willing to do this." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly and said, "Although this prescription is precious, as a member of Penglai Palace, I will naturally not refuse if I can do something." Hearing this, Long Yanwei and Yizihua still did not understand. These words were dignified, but they did not conform to the inner feelings of ordinary people. Chapter 3678. Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes flashed with a bright and resplendent light. "The reason why healing medicine is so precious is because everyone has a need for it. As a doctor, saving others is part of my duty. Besides, the hallmaster's conditions are not unjust to me. In this way, I will have the hallmaster as my backer in the future. Why not?" Long Yanwei, who had been very puzzled, finally understood after hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's explanation. After hearing the reasons that the latter had listed out, he understood that the biggest reason why Bailey Hongzhuang had chosen to do this was because everyone wanted to protect the Xingshan continent. He could not help but feel shocked. It seems that he does not understand Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three well enough. He never thought that they would have such a selfless side to them. In this place where almost everyone placed their own interests above all else, it was rare for Bailey Hongzhuang to make such a decision. The hall master will be very happy when he hears this news. A smile appeared in Long Yanwei's eyes. Previously, the hall master was worried that his appearance would pressure you all, so he left first. Your decision has really surprised us. As he spoke, Long Yanwei's eyes lit up and he continued, I've already asked for 4 fire fruits from the hall master. Furthermore, the hall master will also give you some rewards. Aside from that, if you need anything else, you can also ask the hall master. You've made such a great contribution, I'm sure that the hall master will not refuse. Hearing Long Yanwei's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen raised their eyebrows. However, when they saw Long Yanwei's treacherous look, they could not help but find it funny. It seems that the hall master was not the only one who liked to rob Long Yanwei. Long Yanwei also liked to take advantage of the hall master. Yanwei, you're not just protecting your disciples. If the hall master sees you like this, he'll probably feel extremely helpless. Yizihua sighed. Previously, Long Yanwei had already placed great importance on Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang had handed over the prescription, it was even more incredible. Even if the hall master is here, he will agree. Long Yanwei chuckled. Earlier, Palace Master was lamenting that the demon training tower had actually produced such a genius doctor. Now that our Penglai Palace has also produced a genius doctor, Palace Master doesn't have to envy the demon training tower anymore. Yizihua nodded. That's true. For so long, only the magic training tower's healing medicine had a certain effect on dark energy. I didn't think that Bailey Hongzhuang's healing medicine would have an even better effect. No one would be more depressed than the 100 Flowers Gate once the news got out. The 100 Flower Gate has always been known for its alchemy and medical skills. Who would have thought that it would be the demon training tower first and then our Penglai Palace? This is quite embarrassing for the 100 Flower Gate. Listening to the conversation between the two, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's expressions suddenly became interesting. Thinking back, the 100 Flower Gate had tried their best to invite them to join. However, not only did they not join the 100 Flower Gate, they joined the Penglai Palace instead. If the 100 Flower Gate knew that the healing medicine this time was produced by Bailey Hongzhuang, they would probably be very depressed. Noticing Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's strange expressions, Long Yanwei could not help but ask curiously, "What's wrong? Why do the two of you have such expressions?" Chapter 3679. Am I wrong? Long Yanwei asked doubtfully. Di Beichen chuckled and his handsome face became even more dazzling. Even though Long Yuanwei and Yizihua were men, they couldn't help but sigh in their hearts. This kind of appearance was really monstrous. Master Long, the genius doctor of the demon training tower that you mentioned is actually Hongzhuang. Following Di Beichen's words, Long Yanwei couldn't help but be startled. For a moment he couldn't react. Immediately after, his pupils dilated as he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in astonishment. "The doctor of the demon training tower is you?" Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and said calmly, "That's right, it's me. I remember now." Long Yanwei's eyes lit up. "When I recruited you, you said that you wanted to return to the demon training tower. So that's how it is." At that time, we were preparing to return to the demon training tower to gain experience. However, after being recruited by you, we did not return to the demon training tower. In that case, didn't I accidentally recruit the genius doctor of the demon training tower? Steward Qin of the demon training tower must be so angry that he stomped his feet. Long Yanwei was astonished. He never thought that the cultivator that he had his eyes on was actually the genius doctor that everyone was talking about. That was a delicious cake that everyone was fighting to recruit. He actually didn't know that he had recruited him? If it was said that before, everyone felt that it was a waste for Long Yanwei to pay the price of 3 demon pet eggs to recruit them back. Presumably, now that everyone knew the real situation, they would no longer have such a feeling. On the contrary, everyone would feel that this deal was really worth it. We didn't go back, so we don't know what kind of mood Steward Qin is in. However, based on how much importance Steward Qin placed on Hongzhuang, I'm afraid that is indeed the case. The corner of Di Beichen's mouth slightly raised. Bailey Hongzhuang's position in the demon training tower was already very high, and Steward Qin wanted to use all kinds of resources to obtain the prescription from Bailey Hongzhuang. Thinking about it, they had not returned after leaving this time, so Steward Qin must be very anxious in his heart. However, they didn't plan to stop going to the demon training tower in the future. After all, they still had to find a way to obtain the inheritance of the demon training tower. Right now, they were just trying their best to increase their cultivation and increase their chances of success. Wait. Yizihua raised his right hand and walked to the center of Di Beichen and the others. There was still a trace of doubt in his eyes. "I'm a little confused. You mean to say that the medicine from before was made by Bailey Hongzhuang?" "That's right. Hongzhuang is the genius doctor that you've been longing for," Long Yanwei said with a smile. "It can't be." Even with Yizihua's indifference at this moment, he could not help but open his mouth wide. "Isn't this too much of a coincidence?" "It is indeed a coincidence." Yizihua immediately gave Long Yanwei a thumbs up. "I take back what I said before. Yanwei, your eyesight is simply superb. It's fine if you don't make a move, but the moment you make a move, you've directly recruited the genius doctor that the hall master has been longing for. I was wondering why you were able to make such a healing medicine. Now I finally understand." Yizihua sighed. Thinking about it, other than the people from the demon training tower, no one else knew that this genius doctor was actually so young. I can guarantee that when the hall master finds out about this news, he will definitely be overjoyed. Chapter 3680. Everything was just as Long Yanwei and Yi Zihua had expected. When Bai Cangming found out that Bailey Hongzhuang was the doctor he had been sighing about, he couldn't help but be stunned. Then, when he found out that Bailey Hongzhuang had actually agreed, he was even more overjoyed. Bailey Hongzhuang really agreed? Bai Cangming was still in disbelief. Although he had placed all his hopes on Long Yanwei, he still felt that it was unbelievable when he found out that Bailey Hongzhuang had really agreed, because this was indeed not an easy matter to decide on. Long Yanwei nodded and took out an envelope from his bosom and handed it to Bai Cangming. She has already left behind this prescription. Palace Master Bailey Hongzhuang has already done this. You have to think about it carefully. If you mistreat her, it would be too unreasonable. Bai Cangming took the envelope in astonishment. After opening it and glancing through it, he couldn't help but nod. Indeed, Bailey Hongzhuang is so cooperative. I will definitely not mistreat her. Yanwei, I really didn't expect that you would have such good eyesight when recruiting a cultivator. I previously heard that the 100 Flowers Gate was trying their best to recruit Bailey Hongzhuang, but they didn't succeed. At that time, I was still wondering where this genius doctor had been recruited by. I didn't expect that she would actually come to our Penglai Palace. In that case, you have also made a great contribution. Palace Master, since you feel that I have also made a great contribution, shouldn't you return the demon pet eggs that you robbed from me? Long Yanwei raised his eyebrows. I paid such a huge price to recruit the genius doctor that you have been longing for. You have the nerve to rob the demon pet eggs from me? Hearing that, Bai Cangming's expression froze for a moment, then he smiled brightly. These demon pet eggs can't be taken back. I have even reserved their master. I should indeed thank you for this matter. However, with our many years of friendship, we are well aware of some things. If you need my help in the future, just tell me directly. Long Yanwei rolled his eyes when he saw Bai Cangming's expression that seemed as if he intended to go back on his word. He'd known Bai Cangming for so many years, and he was extremely familiar with Bai Cangming's methods. Speaking of which, why did Bailey Hongzhuang refuse the 100 Flowers Gate's invitation? Yi Zihua frowned. Previously, when I tried to recruit them, they didn't plan to pay attention to me at all. Even if I brought out the reputation of Penglai Island, they were still unmoved. It could be seen that they didn't have any thoughts about joining forces. It was only when I said that I wanted to give them demon pet eggs that they began to be moved. Come to think of it, if I didn't offer the condition of the demon pet egg, then it would definitely be impossible to recruit them back. Long Yanwei shrugged. Thinking back to when he was rejected, he felt very embarrassed. However, now that he knew that the 100 Flowers Gate was also rejected, he felt much better. In my opinion, this Bailey Hongzhuang most likely focused on cultivation instead of medical skills. It is precisely because of this that she refused the invitation of the 100 Flowers Gate. Otherwise, no doctor or alchemist would refuse. Think about it carefully. Bailey Hongzhuang has been in the Penglai Palace for quite some time. She has been training like other cultivators. If it wasn't for this prescription being taken out this time, many people might not even know her identity as a doctor. Chapter 3681. The Palace Master is right. Bailey Hongzhuang did not focus on cultivation. Yi Zihua nodded, but his expression became interesting at the same time. If that's the case, Bailey Hongzhuang did not focus on medical skills at all, but she was still able to achieve this. Her talent in medical skills is too amazing. Bai Cangming and the other two looked at each other. If they thought about it carefully, this was really terrifying. As soon as Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen returned to their residence, they were greeted by Wen Ziren and Shangguan Yingying. Both of them looked curious. How was it? What did you say? Let's talk inside. Di Beichen smiled faintly. So you've handed this prescription to the Palace Master? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. That's right. We've already made this plan long ago. This way it'll be much more convenient. Ziren thought for a moment, then nodded. You're right. 20% of the profit is already very high. With Penglai Palace's ability, once this healing medicine is sold to the outside world, the sales will definitely be huge. Although it's only 20%, the number you'll receive will definitely be very shocking. Indeed. The corners of Di Beichen's lips raised slightly. From the perspective of Penglai Palace, this ratio is indeed very high. I think the Palace Lord should be giving us special preferential treatment because of Lord Long. At first, he was very surprised when he heard this condition. From the perspective of a force, it was usually impossible to offer such a high ratio. Master Long is indeed very good to us. He has been taking care of us since we came here. Shengguan Yingying's eyes shone with joy. Now that you've handed this prescription over, I think your status in Penglai Palace will be very different in the future. Even if we don't hand this prescription over, our status will already be different. You can see it from the attitude of the inner palace disciples. Xiren chuckled. We don't have any enemies in the outer palace now. Basically, no one will dare to cause trouble for us. Right? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes suddenly lit up, and then she took out 2 fiery red fruits from her bosom. This is what Master Long just gave us. What's this? Shengguan Yingying looked at the 2 bright red fruits, her face full of curiosity. The 2 fruits were fiery red in color, and there was a flowing luster flickering within them. At a glance, one could tell that they were filled with rich energy. Fire fruit. This is the fiery fruit. When Xiren was surprised. Supposedly, this fiery fruit is capable of tempering one's cultivation, and it's even capable of assisting a cultivator's cultivation to advance a step further. It's a treasure that practically all cultivators pursue, but it's extremely difficult to come by, and even the Cloud's Word sect doesn't possess such a treasure. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. You have a good eye. Of course. Although I'm not as good at distinguishing medicinal herbs as you are, I know a lot about heaven and earth treasures. A trace of pride appeared between Xiren's brows. He had studied these treasures in the past. This is what Lord Long got from the Palace Lord for us. With this fiery fruit, our strength can be improved. Di Beiqin said aloud. Chapter 3682. Master Long is indeed very good to you. This fiery fruit must be a very precious treasure in Penglai Palace. Ordinary cultivators would never be able to obtain it. Shengguan Yingying's tone was filled with envy, but her smile was very sincere. However, you have made such a great contribution this time. It is only right that you receive such a reward. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Indeed, with these fiery fruits, our cultivation can take another step forward. As she spoke, Bailey Hongzhuang handed the fiery fruit to Shengguan Yingying. You must also take advantage of the medicinal power of this fiery fruit to break through to the 6th level of the Purple Realm. Looking at the 2 fiery fruits in her hands, Shengguan Yingying could not help but be stunned. Us. Yes. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded as if it was the right thing to do. Master Long gave us a total of 4 fiery fruits. It is just enough for the 4 of us. Let's take advantage of this opportunity to break through to the 6th level of the Purple Realm. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Shengguan Yingying and Xiren could not help but look at each other in surprise. They had only thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beiqin had fiery fruits. They did not expect that the 2 of them would also have fiery fruits. This healing medicine was developed by you. The 2 of us did not help you at all. How can we accept such an expensive thing? Xiren waved his hand, his attitude was very firm. Speaking of which, ever since they had arrived at Penglai Island, Bailey Hongzhuang and her husband had already helped them a lot. This fiery fruit was very precious. If they accepted it just like that, it would be too shameless. We are a team. Naturally, everyone should have a share of this. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. In her heart, the 4 of them were already a team. The improvement of the team was her improvement. Xiren is right. Shengguan Yingying also said, Hongzhuang, you've already helped us a lot. We can't accept this kind of thing anymore. Looking at Shengguan Yingying and Xiren's resolute faces, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but look at Di Beiqin. After all, Di Beiqin and the other 2 had grown up together, so there was no need to worry so much. Hongzhuang has already put it this way. Why do you refuse? Di Beiqin's expression was gentle. Don't we share blessings and misfortunes together? Don't tell me that you don't want to share the burden with us in the future? Beiqin, you know that's not what we meant, Xiren said. Di Beiqin's lips curved slightly. Since that's not what you meant, then there's no need to say anything more. Just accept it. Otherwise, it means that you're not willing to treat each other with sincerity. Xiren's lips froze. He wanted to say something, but in the end he didn't. He looked deeply at Bailey Hongzhuang and Shengguan Yingying, then nodded and said, All right, no more pleasantries. Everything depends on action. That's right. Di Beiqin patted Xiren's shoulder. We've known each other for so many years. There's no need to be so formal. You should take advantage of this fire fruit's medicinal power to break through to the 6th level of the Purple Realm as soon as possible. Otherwise, it won't be easy for you to catch up to my cultivation. Xiren rolled his eyes. So what if I break through to the 6th level of the Purple Realm? You might break through to the 7th level of the Purple Realm directly. I won't be able to catch up to you then. Although you won't be able to catch up, it's still better than the gap widening. Di Beichen chuckled. Chapter 3683. The four of them each took a fiery fruit and went into seclusion. Since they had obtained such a treasure, it was better to consume it as soon as possible. The tempering process after consuming the fiery fruit was not something that could be completed in a short period of time. It would take at least a few days because cultivators who had reached the Purple Realm had a lot of elemental energy stored in their bodies. Naturally, it would take a long time to purify all the impurities. For cultivators, the longer the tempering time, the better. This way the tempering would be more thorough. Long Yanwei was not surprised when he found out that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three had gone into seclusion. However, the auction was still organized. It was an internal auction of Penglai Palace. There was only one item to be auctioned, healing medicine. Although there was only one item to be auctioned, the cultivators of Penglai Palace were still enthusiastic. They were even more enthusiastic than when they attended the auction on a normal day. Before Bailey Hongzhuang went into seclusion, she had already handed over the auction to Long Yanwei. She did not intend to participate. Long Yanwei also smiled and agreed. He would just wait for the auction to end and give the points to Bailey Hongzhuang. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three came out of seclusion, the auction had already ended. It seems that all of us have done well. We have all successfully reached the 6th level of the Purple Realm. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Wen Xiren and Shangguan Yingying in front of her. She could feel that everyone's aura had strengthened. Shangguan Yingying's face was filled with a joyful smile. Yes, we were still some distance away from breaking through the 6th level of the Purple Realm. Now, with the help of the fiery fruit, we have directly broken through. Not only that, the elemental energy in our bodies seems to have become stronger after the tempering. This fiery fruit is indeed a treasure. Indeed. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. The purer the elemental energy, the more stable our foundation will be. It will be helpful for our future advancement. Beichen, have you broken through to the 7th level of the Purple Realm? Xiren's gaze fell on Di Beichen. At this moment, Di Beichen's aura was completely restrained, so he could not determine. Hearing this, Di Beichen smiled and nodded. Seeing this, Xiren couldn't help but cover his face with one hand and said helplessly, "It seems that it's not easy for me to catch up to you." After consuming the fire fruit, he had successfully broken through to the 6th level of the Purple Realm, but there was still a long way to go before he could break through to the 7th level of the Purple Realm. Di Beichen had now successfully broken through to the 7th level of the Purple Realm. Although it was only a single level of difference, the difference in elemental energy was significant. The future is long. Perhaps there will be a chance in the future. Di Beichen raised his eyebrows. Although he was comforting Xiren, he did not believe that Xiren would have such an opportunity. By the way, Hongzhuang. Shangguan Yingying walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side and said, "We have been in seclusion for a few days. I think the auction should be over by now." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. "It was held 3 days ago. It has already ended. We will know when we go to Master Long's place later." The rules of the auction had already been set. Cultivators would exchange points for points. It didn't matter whether she was there or not, so there was no need to waste any time. "I think there must be a lot of points this time." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. "After we get these points, I plan to take a look at the resource room and see if I can find some suitable cultivation resources." Chapter 3684. Hearing Shangguan Yingying's words of concern, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a lotus-like smile. "Yingying, I understand. I just want to see if there are any treasures that can improve my mental strength. Now that my cultivation is improving at a good speed, the improvement of my mental strength is slightly slow. So, I want to find treasures in this area to improve." She usually did not spend much time on alchemy, but her alchemy skills had been steadily improving. That was because her mental strength was much stronger than cultivators of the same cultivation. However, during this period of time, the improvement of her mental strength had been slower than her cultivation. If this continued, it would not be a good sign. So, she thought of this method. Compared to treasures that could improve cultivation, treasures that could improve mental strength were much rarer. However, Penglai Palace was a top force. She felt that there might be some. "I see." Shangguan Yingying suddenly understood. Although this kind of treasure is hard to find with Penglai Palace's foundation, they should still have some. "I don't know. We'll know when we see it tomorrow. Then I'll go with you." Then Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen went to Long Yanwei's palace. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and Shengguan Yingying's figures, Long Yanwei's eyes suddenly filled with a smile. You guys have been in seclusion for a longer time than I thought. It seems that the harvest is not bad. This is all thanks to Sir's help. Otherwise it would have taken us a long time to improve. Bailey Hongzhuang cupped her hands. Long Yanwei smiled and waved his hand. Although I helped, it was mainly because of your own ability. If it were not for you guys concocting this healing medicine, I would not have been able to get this fiery fruit from the palace master. No matter what, we will remember Sir Long's care in our hearts. We dare not forget. Di Beichen's deep eyes flashed with sincerity. On Penglai Island he was only grateful to two people. One was Di Yujue who saved him and the other was Long Yanwei. The effect of this auction is very good. The number of points obtained from the auction is not small. I have already instructed someone to transfer these points to your points card. Long Yanwei looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. There are many treasures in the Penglai Palace's resource room. You can use these points to exchange for what you need. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was a little surprised. She didn't think that Long Yanwei had directly transferred the points to her point plate. After coming out of seclusion, she didn't even notice the changes on her point plate. Now that she glanced at it, her pupils couldn't help but dilate a little, and the astonishment on her face became even more obvious. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's astonished expression, Long Yanwei couldn't help but laugh. Isn't this number more than you think? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Indeed, it's much more than I expected. You still underestimated the importance of this healing medicine in the hearts of the Inner Palace disciples. If you had also participated in this auction, you would have understood everyone's eagerness. Long Yanwei smiled faintly. This prescription is too important to everyone in Penglai Palace. Therefore, the Palace Master has decided to directly grant you the status of Inner Palace disciples. Following Long Yanwei's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were both stunned. Become Inner Palace disciples? Chapter 3685. Cultivators who have made outstanding contributions to the Penglai Palace can be directly promoted to Inner Palace disciples. Originally, only you, Bailey Hongzhuang, had this qualification. However, this healing medicine is too important for Inner Palace cultivators. In addition, we considered that you are a team and it would not be appropriate to separate you. In addition, the four of you are not weak. Therefore, we have decided to let you all become Inner Palace disciples together. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen could not help but look at each other. Originally, they wanted to participate in the Inner Palace disciple assessment. They did not expect that they would be able to become Inner Palace disciples without the assessment. However, becoming Inner Palace disciples is not only a motivation for you, but also a pressure. The Inner Palace disciples are usually much stronger than the Outer Palace disciples. Since you are joining as an exception, it is inevitable that you will attract some attention. According to my judgment, the Inner Palace disciples know that the healing medicine was developed by you and will not target you. Therefore, there is no need to worry too much. After all, from another perspective, you are their saviors. We understand. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen nodded. Thank you, Palace Master and Master Long. The Palace Master has been in a good mood recently. He originally planned to tell you the rewards personally. However, after knowing that you were in seclusion, he did not disturb you and directly handed the rewards to me. As he spoke, Long Yanwei took out a Chenghuan bag and handed it to Bailey Hongzhuang. This is the reward the Palace Master gave you. There must be a lot of treasures inside. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. She did not expect the Palace Master to give her other rewards. Presumably, the rewards given by the Palace Master would not be bad. From today onwards, you are Inner Palace disciples. Later, pack your things and you can live in the Inner Palace. As for the training grounds, due to your current cultivation bases, you can decide where you want to train. Usually, the cultivation of Inner Palace disciples has reached Purple Realm 7th level and above. With your current cultivation, there is still a gap. It is more dangerous to enter the training ground of the Inner Palace. I think there is no need to rush in for the time being. Thank you for your concern, Master Long. We understand. I believe that you all know what to do. In any case, consider it yourselves. Long Yanwei smiled faintly. If there are no problems, you can go back and rest. At this moment, Di Beichen suddenly said, Master Long, we plan to leave Penglai Palace for a while. Leave Penglai Palace? Long Yanwei frowned in confusion. Where are you going? Back then, when we went to the Demon Training Tower, We had wanted to try and see if we could obtain the Demon Training Tower's legacy. However, back then our cultivation bases were not high enough. Now that our cultivation bases have increased, it just so happens that we cannot go to the training grounds of the Inner Palace for the time being. Thus, we plan on going to the Demon Training Tower. Di Baichen had a serious expression. They had never given up on the inheritance of the Devil Training Pagoda. Now that they had some free time, it was also extremely suitable for them to go to the Devil Training Tower to explore. If they could obtain the inheritance of the Devil Training Pagoda, then they would have some additional means when they came to this training ground. Chapter 3686. I see. Long Yanwei came to a realization. Penglai Palace doesn't stop cultivators from going out. Usually, many cultivators want to go to the Demon Training Tower. You guys can go, but be careful. Yes. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Ying returned to their residence, they mentioned their plan to Xiren and Wen Xiren. Wen Xiren immediately agreed. We really should go back to the Demon Training Tower. Although we don't know if we can get the inheritance, we have to try. Shangguan Ying nodded. We are now cultivators of the 6th level of the Purple Realm. We don't have to worry about others discovering our cultivation and not daring to reveal our identities. Think about how sullen we were before. This time we can go back openly. Looking at Wen Xiren and Shangguan Ying's excited faces, Bailey Hongzhuang's smile was as bright as a flower. Then this time, we will go back as Penglai Palace's Inner Palace disciples. Now, they were no longer the rookies they were when they first came to Penglai Island. They needed to be careful everywhere. Moreover, with the identity of Penglai Palace's disciples, they were no longer the same as before. When do we leave? Shangguan Ying was in high spirits. She could not wait to return to Penglai Palace. We have to pack up now and then go to the Inner Palace to find a new residence. Di Baichen said slowly. Also, Hongzhuang needs to go to the resource hall to find the treasures she needs. We will leave in 2 days. Hearing this, Xiren nodded. Okay. The 4 of them quickly packed up and followed the cultivator who came to guide them to the Inner Palace. As the 4 of them walked all the way to the Inner Palace, they suddenly realized that the Inner Palace was at the back of Penglai Palace. It was different from the Outer Palace disciples. This was the real center. Not only was the location different, but even the buildings were slightly different. They were more reserved and noble. Judging from the buildings, the number of Inner Palace disciples is indeed much less than the Outer Palace disciples. When Xiren looked around. However, the Inner Palace disciples are indeed stronger. I haven't seen anyone with a weaker aura than me. Di Baichen's expression was calm and reserved. He lowered his voice and said, the Inner Palace disciple assessment requires cultivators of the 7th level of the Purple Realm and above. It's natural that you haven't seen any cultivators with a weaker aura than you. So, you need to be more careful in the future. If you are surrounded by Inner Palace's cultivators, it will not be the same as when you were in the Outer Palace. 7th level of the 7th level of the Purple Realm? I, too. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed and patted Wen Xiren's shoulder. There is always a mountain higher than the other, just get used to it. The Inner Palace cultivators looked at them curiously. Isn't that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3? Why are they in the Inner Palace? Haven't you heard? Bailey Hongzhuang gave the prescription of the healing medicine to the Palace Master and made a great contribution. Therefore, the Palace Master made an exception and accepted them as Inner Palace disciples. Chapter 3687. Although they haven't been in the Penglai Palace for long, their presence is stronger than those of us who have been in the Inner Palace for several years. Who in the entire Penglai Palace doesn't know their names? What you said is true. I didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills to be so experienced. With that healing medicine, our safety will be greatly improved. I can understand the Palace Master's approach. 100 Flowers Gate hasn't been able to develop it until now, but our Penglai Island has. Isn't this the pride of our Penglai Island? That's true, but the person who developed this healing medicine is Bailey Hongzhuang. The people behind her are completely basking in her glory. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 were a walking topic. No matter where they went, it was inevitable that they would be talked about. It's just that when everyone was talking about it, Wen Xiren's face couldn't help but be a little ugly. Speaking of which, his achievements in Penglai Palace were indeed inseparable from Bailey Hongzhuang. For this, his heart was already very guilty. At this moment, when everyone mentioned it in front of him, his mood was naturally very complicated. Di Baichen noticed the change in Xiren's mood and hugged Xiren with his big hand. These people are all envious and jealous. If you care about it because of this, then it's not fair. Yeah, aren't they envious that we have a friend like Hong Zhuang? Shengguan Yingying chuckled. I'm very calm. What's the big deal? They're all envious. When Xiren, who was originally a little depressed, couldn't help but laugh after hearing what Shengguan Yingying said. You guys are too shameless to comfort yourselves like this. Shameless is the only way to have a bright future, Xiao He said with a smile. Under the guidance of the person who came, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 people came to their living area. As soon as they walked into the house, they found that the room was obviously more spacious and bright than the residence in the outer palace. Even the decorations inside were more meticulous. It was obviously not on the same level. The treatment of inner palace disciples is indeed different. Just the living area alone is much more luxurious. Shengguan Yingying walked to the side and sat down. With their encounters in the Penglai Palace, the living environment was constantly improving. This place is indeed more comfortable to live in, and the concentration of primary energy here seems to have increased. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Xiren looked at the environment in front of him and said, although the living area is good, most of the time we are busy training. The time we live here is really too short. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 2 looked at each other and then sighed. This is true, I think the other disciples in the inner hall are the same as us. Hongzhuang, shall we go to the resource room to take a look later? Shengguan Yingying suggested. I also want to see what kind of rich cultivation resources the Penglai Palace's resource room has. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Okay. Xiren, are you guys going? We won't be going. Xiren waved his hand. We are inner palace disciples now. Baichen and I will go find Senior Ren and the others. After all, we plan to leave in 2 days. We probably won't be back for a while. Chapter 3688. After making their decision, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 walked out of the house together and prepared to head to their respective residences. However, not long after they walked out of the house, they suddenly saw an unexpected figure. Ao Lingxiao? Xiren looked at the figure in front of him in surprise. Why are you here? Compared to Xiren's surprise, Ao Lingxiao was very calm. When Xiren, we meet again. I've also become an inner palace disciple. We can often meet again in the future. Listening to Ao Lingxiao's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3's faces were filled with astonishment. When did you become an inner palace disciple? It doesn't seem like it's the time for the inner palace disciple assessment. With Ao Lingxiao's strength, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others did not doubt that he had the strength to become an inner palace disciple. They could tell that Ao Lingxiao was very strong from their previous experience together. However, it was not the time for the inner palace disciple assessment. Even if he had such strength, he had to pass the assessment first. Ao Lingxiao raised his eyebrows. I've passed the inner palace disciple assessment long ago. It's just that I've never been interested in entering the inner palace, so I stayed in the outer palace. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 were stunned again when they heard that. However, they understood in their hearts. From beginning to end, Ao Lingxiao was not interested in the inner hall. The reason why he appeared here was nothing more than his interest in Di Baichen. It seemed that Ao Lingxiao wanted to be a follower to the end. Although you've become an inner palace disciple now, we can't train together for the time being. Di Baichen smiled faintly. We still have some things to do, so we'll be leaving first. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 2 followed behind Di Baichen and left together. Ao Lingxiao was puzzled by Di Baichen's words, but he did not ask. Now, I feel that this Ao Lingxiao is becoming more and more strange. Every outer palace disciple yearns to become an inner palace disciple. Moreover, he has clearly passed the test, yet he still insists on staying in the outer palace. Using normal logic to explain this is truly inexplicable. Shengguan Yingying shook her head and frowned. She really couldn't see through this inexplicable guy. Maybe people with ability have such a bad taste. Bailey Hongzhuang spread out her hands, but her expression was very calm. In her previous life, she also knew a lot of people with weird personalities. Perhaps they felt that life wasn't interesting enough, so they added some color to it. Now that you mention it, it's even stranger. Since he's not interested in what everyone else is interested in, why is he so interested in Baichen? Shengguan Yingying's eyes fell on Di Baichen. After pondering for a moment, she suddenly widened her eyes. Could it be that Ao Lingxiao is gay? PFFF. After hearing this, Xiren, who was walking, couldn't control his emotions. Then he choked on his own saliva. Cough, cough, cough. Ying, aren't your thoughts a bit too exaggerated? However, Shangguan Ying said in a serious tone, I think my thoughts are very reasonable. You see, with Beichen's appearance, normal people would be mesmerized. If this Ao Lingxiao is gay, then isn't it normal for him to fancy Beichen? Chapter 3689. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was a bit strange. She couldn't help but look at Di Beichen beside her. Just as Shangguan Ying had said, Di Beichen's appearance was enough to charm anyone. Even a woman wouldn't be able to have such a good-looking face, yet it was on a man's face. Thinking back to the first time she saw Di Beichen, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but be stunned. Even after seeing it so many times, she still felt that it was a face that could enchant people. Ziren originally wanted to refute Shangguan Ying, but after hearing the latter's impeccable reasoning, he didn't know how to refute. What Ying said seems to make some sense? Ziren looked at Di Beichen doubtfully. Feeling Ziren's curious gaze, Di Beichen's face suddenly became gloomy. He had lived for so long and it was normal for women to take a fancy to him. However, this was the first time a man had taken a fancy to him. Why are you looking at me like that? His low voice carried a bit of threat and warning. Ziren touched his head and smiled brightly. I naturally know that you don't have such thoughts. Di Beichen's face darkened. Shangguan Ying walked to Di Beichen's side and said, Beichen, I'm telling the truth. Although there are only a few people in the Xingqian continent who have such fetishes, they really do exist. You haven't encountered it before, but it doesn't mean that you won't encounter it now. In fact, with your face, it's very normal for you to encounter such a situation. Di Beichen's face darkened even more. You see, that Ao Lingxiao has always been alone. He's not interested in anyone. Hongzhuang is a first-class beauty, right? But he didn't pay much attention to Hongzhuang at all. He made it clear from the beginning that he was paying attention to you. Shangguan Ying patted her forehead. I finally understand. What do you understand? Di Beichen gritted his teeth and asked. Didn't Ao Lingxiao say that he wasn't sure about one thing? If he's sure, he'll tell us. It seems like it's his first time liking a man, so he's suffering in his heart. But he can't bear to give up on you, so he's been following you and thinking about whether he really likes men. Shangguan Ying could not hide the excitement on her face. She looked as if she had discovered a new continent. She looked at Wen Ziren and Bailey Hongzhuang excitedly and said, Do you think my analysis makes sense? Puchi. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but laugh. She didn't know how Shangguan Ying's imagination went wild. She actually thought of such a possibility. At this time, Di Beichen said in a deep voice, Ziren, I think you need to take care of Ying. What is she researching all day long? Be careful when she finds a man to pair you up with. After all, your face is also a feast for the eyes. Wen Ziren, who was originally snickering, heard Di Beichen's words and couldn't help but stare blankly, suddenly unable to continue laughing. In the next second, Di Beichen pulled Bailey Hongzhuang's hand and walked forward. It seems that I have to keep my wife away from Ying. Otherwise, it's not worth it if she's led astray. Shangguan Ying looked at Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang's back in astonishment. She quickly said, Hey, wait for us. However, Ziren pulled Shangguan Ying's hand and said, Ying, tell me, where did you learn this from? Chapter 3690. Bailey Hongzhuang walked beside Di Beichen. Looking at his stiff and awkward face, she couldn't hide the smile on her lips. Wife, do you think it's funny? Di Beichen raised his eyebrows and asked. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled and nodded. Haha, it's funny. I think Ying's words make sense. Wife, you've been led astray by Ying. Beichen, what if it's really as Ying guessed? What will you do? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen with a smile. She rarely saw Di Beichen so embarrassed. It was really interesting. Thinking about it, if all of this was true, she really didn't know what Di Beichen would do. I'll kill him. Di Beichen said lightly. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but laugh. Haha, I hope Ao Lingxiao doesn't really have such thoughts. On the other side. Achoo. Ao Lingxiao sneezed a few times in a row. He rubbed his nose and his face was full of doubts. Is there someone talking about me today? Why do I keep sneezing? It's really strange. Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Ying came to the resource room together. The Penglai Palace's resource room could be called the resource hall. The scope was undoubtedly much larger than they had imagined. Penglai Palace's foundation is really extraordinary. Just by looking at this resource hall, you can tell that there must be a lot of treasures inside. Shangguan Yingying's face was full of emotion. She had long felt that this place was definitely not simple. Now it seemed that she was right. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. I hope there are treasures here that I need. I think there should be. Shangguan Yingying smiled faintly. This place is so big. The number of treasures inside seems to be quite a lot. Although the treasures that you need to improve your spiritual power are not many, with the foundation of Penglai Palace, they should still exist. Hearing this, the smile on Bailey Hongzhuang's lips widened a little. I hope it's really as you expect. To Bailey Hongzhuang, spiritual power was undoubtedly extremely important. Whether it was alchemy, inscription, or other skills, they were all inseparable from one's spiritual force. The reason why she was able to master these skills was because of her outstanding spiritual force. It was precisely because her mental strength was very strong that she was able to achieve twice the result with half the effort when learning these things. Otherwise, even if her talent was very good, it would be very difficult for her to reach this step. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Yi Zichen arrived at the resource room, they discovered that it was also a very lively place. At this moment, there were many cultivators inside choosing the cultivation resources they needed. The layout of the resource room was very simple. Rows of shelves were placed with different levels of treasures. The bottom of each treasure was marked with its name, function, and points needed to exchange for it. The closer to the back of the counter, the higher the value of the treasure. Similarly, the more points needed to exchange for it. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at it and directly gave up on the several counters in front of her. Resources that could improve one's spiritual power were more difficult to find than resources that could directly improve one's cultivation. She did not need to look at the low-level resources at all. If such a treasure really existed in the resource hall, then the points needed to exchange for it would not be small. Chapter 3691. Listening to Shangguan Yingying's words, Bailey Hongzhuang glanced around and nodded. Okay, if you find it, call me. No problem. If you see any resources you like, you can also tell me. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and blinked, giggling. Okay. Shangguan Yingying nodded. I actually don't need anything now. The most important thing is to help you find treasures that can help improve your spiritual power. After the two separated, Bailey Hongzhuang shuttled through these counters. There were indeed many treasures here. Every one of them was something that cultivators would be envious of. Many things that were rarely seen or appeared in auctions could be seen here. This also made Bailey Hongzhuang understand how deep the heritage of Penglai Palace was. Many of the things here are difficult to find even in auctions on ordinary days. I didn't expect that you can exchange them with points here. It seems that this Penglai Palace has included many precious treasures. Xiao Bai looked at the many treasures in front of her and couldn't help but sigh. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Indeed, Penglai Palace can have such a status. It is precisely because there are resources that other places can't have that it can attract so many cultivators. This was the attraction of a big force. Perhaps the treasures that couldn't be found in other places could be easily obtained here. There are so many treasures here. If we can take some away, we will be rich. Xiao Hei's eyes flashed brightly, her hands constantly rubbing. Her excited look was like she was having a beautiful dream. She was almost drooling. Looking at Xiao Hei's eager look, Bailey Hongzhuang quickly said, Xiao Hei, don't have any ideas about these treasures. This place looks very ordinary, but there are definitely many strong cultivators. As long as someone dares to have any thoughts of robbing, they will definitely be subdued in the first place. As early as when she walked in, Bailey Hongzhuang had already felt several auras here. These were definitely the auras of strong cultivators. At the very least, with her current cultivation, she was no match for him, so it was better for her to stay put. Upon hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Xiao Hei could not help but droop her head. Sigh, there are so many treasures that I can only look at. What a waste. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. Penglai Palace must have spent a lot of effort to get so many treasures. It would be strange if you could take them away so easily. All right. Xiao Hei pursed her lips. Master, speaking of which, there are very few treasures that can increase one's mental strength. We've seen all sorts of treasures along the way, but we haven't seen any that can increase mental strength. Such treasures are rare to begin with. Let's be patient. If we really don't have any, we can think of something after we go to the Demon Training Tower. Although the Demon Training Tower was different from the Penglai Palace, there were also many treasures there. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang, Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai were searching and talking, Shangguan Yingying's voice suddenly came from not far away. Chapter 3692. If I say it's mine, then it's mine. Chu Yunyao glanced at Shangguan Yingying indifferently. After noticing Shangguan Yingying's clothes, the disdain in her eyes grew stronger. You're just an outer palace disciple. How dare you snatch something from me? Don't you want to stay in Penglai Palace? What a big tone. Shangguan Yingying frowned coldly. Although I haven't been in Penglai Palace for a long time, it's rare to see someone as unreasonable as you. Oh. Chu Yunyao's lips curled up a little. So you're new. No wonder you're so daring. Since you're new, I'll kindly advise you that you'd better not snatch things from inner palace disciples in Penglai Palace. Otherwise you'll be in trouble. Chu Yunyao patted Shangguan Yingying's chest, her eyes full of ridicule. Be good and let go of your hand. Even if you really want this thing, I'm afraid you don't have enough points to exchange for it. Don't look down on me. Shangguan Yingying glared. I'm also an inner palace disciple. Who said I don't have points to exchange for it? I got this thing first. Even you inner palace disciples don't have the right to snatch it. Chu Yunyao was slightly stunned. She looked at Shangguan Yingying's appearance and couldn't help laughing. Haha, you said you're an inner palace disciple? You didn't just come today, did you? Don't you know that the clothes of inner palace disciples and outer palace disciples look the same, but in fact they are different? With your appearance, it's ridiculous to pretend to be an inner palace disciple. Shangguan Yingying looked down at her clothes and felt a little helpless. She had just been promoted to inner palace disciple today, so she didn't immediately change into inner palace disciple's clothes. Who would have thought that she would encounter such trouble? Cut the crap. In short, I've taken a fancy to this thing. I won't give it to you. Don't even think about it. With that, Shangguan Yingying grabbed the thing with both hands. From her serious expression, one could tell that she would definitely not hand it over. She had been looking for a long time but hadn't seen a treasure that could improve mental strength. She thought it was gone. She didn't expect to see it on the counter behind her. Naturally, she was extremely happy. Since she came to Penglai Palace, she always felt guilty to Bailey Hongzhuang because she couldn't help her. Anyway, she was very happy to find this treasure. At least it was something that could help Hong. However, just when she took it in her hand, a woman grabbed her hands handed over. She had never seen such an unreasonable person. But she had never seen such an unreasonable person. If you hand the item over to me now, I can let bygones be bygones. If you continue to be stubborn, don't blame me for not warning you. A hint of impatience flashed in Chu Yunyao's eyes. With her reputation in the inner hall, how many people dared to snatch things from her? What can you do if I don't give it to you? Shangguan Yingying looked at Chu Yunyao coldly. She didn't want to cause any more trouble. After all, they had just entered the inner palace and the inner palace disciples were strong. It was not good to cause trouble. Chapter 3693. If you don't hand it over? Chu Yunyao's eyes suddenly became cold. In this Penglai Palace, it's normal for inner palace disciples to kill a few outer palace disciples. When Bailey Hongzhuang arrived and heard this remark, her slender willow leaf eyebrows suddenly wrinkled. In her sight, she saw a woman wearing a red gauze dress, outlining her graceful figure. Her long black hair was elegant and moving, and even the hairband was dazzling red. Ostentatious, dancing, proud, disdainful. At first sight, Chu Yunyao gave Bailey Hongzhuang such a feeling. At this moment, Chu Yunyao was looking down at Shangguan Yingying, as if the latter was an ant that could be pinched to death with a light pinch. Yingying, what happened? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Shangguan Yingying, and her eyes suddenly fell on the lavender fruit in her hand. Yunling fruit. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately recognized the origin of this fruit. Among the many heaven and earth treasures, there were not many that were useful for mental strength, and this Yunling fruit belonged to one of the more outstanding ones. It was just that this Yunling fruit was rarely seen, even in auctions, so Bailey Hongzhuang did not have much hope. She did not expect that there would be a Yunling fruit here, but after seeing the Yunling fruit and then looking at Shangguan Yingying and Chu Yunyao, she had already roughly understood what had happened. When Chu Yunyao saw Bailey Hongzhuang for the first time, her expression froze for a moment, her pupils could not help but dilate a little, and a strong shock flashed in her heart. Beautiful, exquisite, otherworldly beauty. In a short moment, many words flashed in Chu Yunyao's mind. She had never seen such a beautiful woman. Even as a woman, she had to admit that this was a face that could turn all living things upside down. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, it would have been hard for her to believe that there would be such a wonderful person in this world. All along she had boasted that her appearance was outstanding, and her sister Chu Yunxiang was the most beautiful person in her heart, but she never thought that today her firm belief would actually waver for a moment. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang coming, Shangguan Yingying frowned and whispered, "Hongzhuang, I got the yunling fruit first, but she insisted that I give it to her. I didn't want to, so she wanted to take it by force." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's expression changed a little, but her expression was very calm. She had vaguely heard the conversation between Shangguan Yingying and Shangguan Yingying, so she understood. "I am Chu Yunyao of the Inner Palace. This yunling fruit is exactly what I need." Chu Yunyao still raised her chin, and there was no modesty in her words. So what if the woman in front of her was very outstanding? Whatever she took a fancy to was hers. This was because she had already noticed that Bailey Hongzhuang was also wearing the uniform of an Outer Palace disciple. As long as it was an Outer Palace disciple, she would not pay attention to it at all. "If you give this yunling fruit to me, I can give you some benefits. If you refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit, then don't blame me for being rude." Chapter 3694. Master, this woman is really arrogant. It's disgusting. Xiao He lazily looked at Chu Yunyao in front of her. Although they had not stayed in Penglai Palace for a long time, most people were not so annoying. It's really an eye-opener for her to be so righteous when she snatches people's things. Xiao Bai was also speechless for a while. "I think this woman's disgust is comparable to that of Duan Huali." Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Chu Yunyao indifferently and said, "We have no interest in your so-called benefits. We'll take our leave first. Goodbye." As soon as her voice fell, Bailey Hongzhuang took Shangguan Yingying's hand and prepared to leave. From the first time she saw this woman, she felt that this woman must be the type who would easily cause trouble. She really had no interest in being entangled with her. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang did not give her face, Chu Yunyao's face suddenly turned cold and her eyes were covered with a layer of haze. "Did I say you can go?" The threatening voice was cold and Chu Yunyao's gaze was like a sharp blade shooting straight at the backs of Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying. With her reputation, the outer hall disciples had always been eager to please her. At this moment, she had already introduced herself and the other party still dared to not give her face, which naturally aroused the anger in her heart. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did not pay attention to Chu Yunyao's words at all and continued to move forward without stopping. In her opinion, Chu Yunyao was completely used to throwing tantrums and actually thought that everyone should revolve around her. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang completely ignored her threat, Chu Yunyao's face became more and more unsightly. This person dared to embarrass her like this. Damn it! Chu Yunyao secretly spat. Her figure moved and quickly blocked in front of Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying. "Do you think that you can successfully take the thing away after walking out of this resource hall? Once we leave the resource hall, the spiritual cloud fruit is ours. What's wrong with taking it away?" Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were cold and her words were as cold as ice. Chu Yunyao chuckled. "You have to see clearly that the points required for this cloud spirit fruit are not enough for you as outer hall disciples. You don't have to worry about that. Just because you don't have enough doesn't mean that we don't have enough." Bailey Hongzhuang lifted her delicate chin and her beautiful eyes flashed with a cold light. Although she did not like to look for trouble, this spiritual cloud fruit was exactly what she needed. There was no way she would give it away. Chu Yunyao glared at them. "If you dare to go out, I guarantee that you won't see the sun tomorrow." At this moment, Chu Yunyao's eyes also became ruthless. It was just an outer hall disciple who dared to be so arrogant in front of her. She was really angry. It seemed that she would have to teach these two newbies a lesson for not knowing the immensity of heaven and earth. What big words! The corners of Bailey Hongzhuang's lips suddenly rose and her smile was bright and mocking. "I'm afraid it's not that easy to take my life. Since senior sister wants to try, then I'll wait for you." As soon as these words came out, Chu Yunyao could not help but be stunned. The incredulity in her eyes grew stronger. She had never thought that this woman would be so unyielding and ignore her threat. Chapter 3695. Just as the conflict between the two sides was getting more and more intense, a voice suddenly rang out, "Chu Yunyao, why don't you give me some face and let this matter drop?" With this voice, both Chu Yunyao and Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. However, when they saw the person who had come, their expressions were somewhat complicated. Duan Huali? Chu Yunyao looked at the strong and tall figure in front of her in surprise, as if she didn't expect to see him here. Duan Huali slowly walked over with his hands behind his back. His handsome face was filled with a graceful smile. Chu Yunyao, you're a senior sister after all. It's unbecoming of you to be like this. They're my friends. Why don't you give me some face and let this matter drop? It's Duan Huali. I didn't expect to meet him here. A cold light flashed in Shangguan Yingying's eyes. She remembered clearly that Duan Huali had sent people to the training ground of the outer hall to attack them. She didn't expect that he would come to help them now. It was really funny. Bailey Hongzhuang narrowed her eyes. She didn't expect to meet him so coincidentally. Ever since she handed over the prescription of the healing medicine, she hadn't seen Duan Huali. She only thought that Duan Huali knew that their identities were different from before and didn't dare to cause trouble for them anymore. This was also what she was happy to see. However, she didn't expect to meet him today. Although Duan Huali was speaking for them at the moment, it also told her that Duan Huali hadn't given up yet. If he had given up, Duan Huali would definitely not have come to cause trouble at this time. Since we came back, we haven't seen Xue Changdong. In my opinion, Xue Changdong most likely died at the hands of Duan Huali. Shangguan Yingying lowered her voice and said, "Does this guy think that we don't know anything, so he wants to be the good guy?" They had inquired about Xue Changdong as soon as they returned. After all, this guy had almost put Di Beichen and the others in danger. It would be out of character if they did not teach him a lesson. However, they did not expect that they would not get any information about Xue Changdong even after asking so many people. It was as if Xue Changdong had completely disappeared after returning. However, they still heard from a cultivator that Xue Changdong had been to the inner hall. In this way, it was easy to determine the next piece of news. Killing people to silence them was really in line with Duan Huali's style. Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment and said, "Maybe Xue Changdong didn't reveal any information before. Maybe he thought that we didn't know anything. If that's the case, then this Duan Huali is really funny." Shangguan Yingying sneered in her heart. "I'd like to see what this Duan Huali is going to do." Bailey Hongzhuang looked indifferent. In her heart, she had already labeled Duan Huali as a dead man. It was just that she could not take his life for the time being. However, the final result was certain. Di Beichen was the person she cherished the most. This guy wanted to do something to the person she cherished the most. She would not forgive him. Chu Yunyao looked at Duan Huali indifferently and suddenly smiled. "Duan Huali, I have never seen you have any hobby of helping others. Could it be that you have taken a fancy to this new female disciple this time?" Chapter 3696. Haha. Chu Yunyao chuckled. "I've known you for so many years. Don't tell me I don't even know your temperament? You've always been unable to take your eyes off beautiful women. This woman's appearance is so outstanding. It would be strange if you could let her go." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying couldn't help but look at each other. It seemed that their expectations were really right. It was because of Bailey Hongzhuang that Duan Huali attacked Di Beichen and Wen Ziren. However, Shangguan Yingying didn't understand. Why didn't Duan Huali kill her as well? Did he think that she was not a threat because she was a woman? Duan Huali frowned slightly. "Chu Yunyao, why are you saying these irrelevant things?" Looking at Duan Huali's very nervous appearance, afraid that she would say something she shouldn't say, Chu Yunyao's eyes became gloomier. She had known Duan Huali for many years, so she naturally understood Duan Huali's temperament. Even if he always had a lot of women around him, he never minded. But what was going on now? She had never seen Duan Huali like this. Thinking of this, Chu Yunyao couldn't help but glance at Bailey Hongzhuang. After seeing the latter's indifferent and casual appearance, her heart gradually sank. Could it be that Duan Huali was serious this time? Did he really like this woman? At the same time, Bailey Hongzhuang also noticed Chu Yunyao's constantly changing face. For some reason, she felt that there seemed to be a lot of stories in Chu Yunyao's expression. Anyone could see the reason why Duan Huali suddenly stood up and spoke at this moment, but Chu Yunyao looked like she had lost her soul, which was a little strange. The next second, Chu Yunyao's expression returned to normal. She said, "Duan Huali, if this Yunling fruit is what I want, I will do you a favor. But this Yunling fruit is what my sister wants, so I can't do you a favor." Duan Huali couldn't help but frown when he heard this. "You did it on purpose?" Chu Yunyao's face turned cold. "Duan Huali, I have no intention of playing with you. Weren't you interested in my sister before? You caused such a huge commotion back then. Don't tell me that you're going to snatch my sister's things for the sake of 2 outer palace disciples? Duan Huali's expression froze when he heard Chu Yunyao mention the word, sister. At this moment, seeing Chu Yunyao's words, his expression couldn't help but become even uglier. Nothing happened between me and your sister. Even if we talk about it, it's just a matter of the past. What's the point of mentioning it now? Haha. Chu Yunyao sneered. Yes, how could I forget that you have always been fickle? All women are just your temporary interest. Master, why do I feel that the atmosphere between Chu Yunyao and Duan Huali is a little unusual? Xiao He rubbed her chin, her face full of gossipy expressions. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Indeed, there should be a story between the two of them. Otherwise it shouldn't be like this. She clearly noticed that the smile on Chu Yunyao's lips was self-deprecating, which was very strange. According to the content of their conversation, there should be something between Chu Yunyao's sister and Duan Huali, but why did Chu Yunyao laugh at herself? Chapter 3697. Chu Yunyao, I just want to ask you if you're willing to do me a favor. Why are you talking about all this nonsense? Duan Huali frowned. If he had not been forced to, he would not have wanted to meet Chu Yunyao at all. This woman was completely troublesome. Since he knew that Bailey Hongzhuang had concocted such a healing medicine, he felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was different from the rest. This woman was not only beautiful but also strong and talented. As an inner disciple, he knew too well that this healing medicine had solved the problem that had troubled everyone for many years. Bailey Hongzhuang could do it so easily, which proved that her medical skills were really terrible. Not only that, Bailey Hongzhuang refused him so decisively and did not give him any leeway, which also proved that Bailey Hongzhuang was loyal. If such a woman could become his woman, she would definitely not betray him. In the past, he had never taken the women around him seriously. On the one hand, it was because these women fell into his hands too easily. He was not a stupid person. Naturally, he could see that everyone was just doing it for their own interests. However, for the first time, Bailey Hongzhuang made him feel so different, so he was willing to spend more time and energy on Bailey Hongzhuang. During this period of time, he had been looking for an opportunity to get close to Bailey Hongzhuang, but the latter was in the limelight. With Di Beichen by her side, he could not find a suitable opportunity. He did not expect to see Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen separated today. He felt that this was a good opportunity, so he naturally followed. He wanted to strike up a conversation with Bailey Hongzhuang, but he did not expect to make such a scene. Duan Huali, I have made it very clear that this Yunling fruit is what my sister needs, so it is absolutely impossible to let it go. If you must stand up for this woman, then we can only be enemies. Chu Yunyao's eyes gradually sharpened. You have to think about it carefully. This Yunling fruit requires a lot of points. Do you want to spend so much for this outer disciple? You don't have to worry about the points. Now in the entire Penglai Palace, there are not many people who have more points than her. What do you mean? Chu Yunyao frowned. For a moment she could not understand the meaning of Duan Huali's words. It seems that you don't know that she is Bailey Hongzhuang who made the healing medicine. Duan Huali said slowly. As Duan Huali's voice fell, Chu Yunyao couldn't help but stare at Bailey Hongzhuang. Her gaze changed and there was a bit of astonishment and surprise. She didn't expect that the young woman in front of her was the rumored Bailey Hongzhuang. She had been in retreat before, so she didn't see Bailey Hongzhuang in person. At this moment she had just returned from the experiential learning. She didn't expect that the person in front of her was Bailey Hongzhuang. However, now that she thought about the comments everyone had said, she was really as beautiful as a fairy with a moving temperament. It was just that she was a little younger than she thought. Not only that, they are not the outer disciples in your words. Today the hall master has made an exception and promoted them to inner disciples. Duan Huali continued. Although Bailey Hongzhuang's ability could be said to be at the bottom of the inner disciples, everyone knew very well that Bailey Hongzhuang had a promising future in Penglai Palace. Chapter 3698. I was wondering why Duan Huali suddenly changed his temperament this time. It turns out that this woman is extraordinary. Chu Yunyao said meaningfully, but her eyes looking at Bailey Hongzhuang became deeper and deeper, and there was a hint of resentment. Bailey Hongzhuang, let me tell you, in this Penglai Palace if you rely on your own strength you still have a chance to live well, but if you want to rely on a man just by relying on a face, sooner or later you will end up being abandoned. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved slightly. You can rest assured I will definitely not end up like that, but looking at the way you say this, it seems like you are speaking from the bottom of your heart. Chu Yunyao's expression was stagnant, and her whole body was stiff for a moment. Then she glared at Bailey Hongzhuang with hatred, but she didn't say anything. Duan Huali, this Yunling fruit was taken by my sister, Chu Yunshang. Now you dare to treat my sister like this? You have to deal with the consequences yourself. As soon as her voice fell, Chu Yunyao didn't say anything more and left angrily. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying couldn't help but look at each other. She was just unhappy with Chu Yunyao's statement, so she refuted it, but she didn't expect Chu Yunyao's painful expression. It seemed that she had inadvertently told the truth. She finally left. Shangguan Yingying breathed a sigh of relief. She was worried that Chu Yunyao had been unwilling to let go. This matter was a bit difficult. She didn't expect that after Duan Huali reported the identity of Bailey Hongzhuang, she would leave so sensibly. Bailey Hongzhuang patted Shangguan Yingying on the shoulder and said, "It's okay. We are right in this matter. Even if she doesn't want to leave, she won't get anything good." She never had the habit of giving her things to others, let alone when they were in the right. After seeing that Chu Yunyao had finally left, Duan Huali's slightly gloomy face also became better. He turned around and smiled at Bailey Hongzhuang, saying, "Junior sister Bailey, no one will snatch this Yunling fruit from you anymore." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded her head and said, "Thank you, senior brother Duan." Although she hated Duan Huali very much, now was not the time to shed all pretense of cordiality. She did not want to cause many twists and turns when she left Penglai Palace. With that, Bailey Hongzhuang pulled Shangguan Yingying away, but Duan Huali quickly followed. "Junior sister Bailey, we haven't seen each other in a long time. Why are you in such a hurry to leave? Everyone is busy with cultivation on weekdays. I don't think senior brother Duan is such a free person. It's better not to waste time." Duan Huali smiled faintly. "If I want to spend time on others, it's naturally a waste. However, I don't feel that it's a waste to spend time on junior sister Bailey. On the contrary, I think it's a kind of enjoyment." The low voice was full of ambiguity. Just by opening his mouth, Duan Huali had already shown his purpose incisively and vividly. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned slightly, but her face was very cold. "I feel the opposite of senior brother Duan." Her merciless words caused Duan Huali's expression to turn awkward. However, he quickly recovered and said, "Junior sister Bailey, I don't think I have offended you. Why do you have such an expression when you see me? Aren't you being too unreasonable?" Chapter 3699. Bailey Hongzhuang's attitude was very firm, as if talking to Duan Huali was a test of her patience. She had never liked this kind of person who stuck to her like a dog-skin plaster, let alone an arrogant and stubborn guy like Duan Huali. It's too early to make a conclusion about whether there is fate or not. Duan Huali did not care about Bailey Hongzhuang's rejection. On the contrary, he seemed to have guessed that Bailey Hongzhuang would have such an expression. It didn't matter what she said. Looking at Duan Huali like this, Shangguan Yingying couldn't help but exclaim. In terms of shamelessness, Duan Huali was really at the peak. After Bailey Hongzhuang paid the points, she put the Yunling fruit into her Chengkuan bag. No matter what, it was a great harvest for her to be able to get the Yunling fruit today. Although Duan Huali's appearance was an eyesore, as long as he didn't exist, it was fine. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang had been unwilling to pay attention to him, after leaving a few cold words and leaving, Duan Huali looked at her departing back and a smile slowly appeared on his lips. "Bailey Hongzhuang, you will be my woman sooner or later." However, Duan Huali did not notice that not far behind him, Chu Yunyao's gaze was on him. After hearing Duan Huali's words that were like an oath, Chu Yunyao's hands could not help but clench into fists. "Duan Huali, that woman's attitude towards you is so cold, but you still shamelessly follow her. It's really surprising." Her dark pupils flashed with a cold and ruthless light. "That woman is so different to you? Hongzhuang, do you think that Chu Yunyao will come looking for trouble with us?" Shangguan Yingying's eyes revealed a trace of worry. "If only I had found the Yunling fruit earlier, then I wouldn't have gotten into such trouble for no reason." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and reached out to hold Shangguan Yingying's arm as they walked briskly. "Yingying, your speed is already fast enough. At least you got the Yunling fruit before Chu Yunyao. I really have to thank you. If you didn't get the Yunling fruit, I don't know when you would be able to find such a treasure again. As for what Chu Yunyao's plan is, it's not something we can control. She can do whatever she wants. Anyway, we have always been in trouble. Bailey Hongzhuang's face was indifferent. If she was the one who found the cloud spirit fruit first, the situation wouldn't have changed. Since it was destined to be like this, she was not a person who was afraid of trouble. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Shangguan Yingying's face looked better. Then I'm relieved. I always felt guilty in my heart. You did all this for me. What's there to be sorry about? Hongzhuang, you've been helping me ever since we arrived at Penglai Island. I know you value our friendship, but I still feel guilty about it. Moreover, my recklessness sometimes causes me trouble. I'll change for the better in the future. Even if I can't help you, at least I can't cause trouble. Shangguan Yingying looked serious and her words came from the bottom of her heart. Yingying, you are treating me as an outsider. Bailey Hongzhuang said. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.